Howdy, howdy. Woohoo!
Hello.
What's happening, Kaz, Loretta, everybody?
Welcome to the party.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah, exciting day.
Looking good. Robin, I'm jealous of you.
Mm-hmm.
Looking
We
good.
ready to fly?
I'm nervous and I'm excited. I'm like all the emotions all at once right now.
So awesome.
Are you actually at the site? Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm as close as anyone could be. We're just not going on the grass on the clock right now because it's just raining too hard.
Can we see anything if you turn the camera around?
Let's see. We're pretty far from the launch pad. The launch pad's over there. With my phone camera, you can't really see it, but also the clouds are blocking it, so wouldn't be able to see at this minute. Yeah.
And you
Cloud
can't see the
coverage
grass
today
on
is
the
intense.
clock?
I can. Let me see if I can.
We're just living vicariously through you, Robin. Don't mind
No,
us.
I'm gonna try to walk you guys over and make sure I still have connection. But yeah, I'm at Kennedy right now, and it's a lot of people are showing up.
Part of any launch in my life.
Oh, you
This
got to do
is-
it, Kaz.
This
It's a
is a
religious experience.
geek boy's wet dream happening right now.
Hey, you want to know something funny, guys? Before I was a space reporter, I was a TV critic, and I covered The Expanse.
Oh, that's, I hope you gave it a good rating, Robin.
Oh, I loved it. It's one of my favorite shows.
And who's the best actor in that show?
Exactly.
Oh, very funny. Very.
Good question. Yeah.
No pressure.
Oh, look, we're gonna do a quick. I'm gonna walk around here. I don't want to walk in front of my reporter colleagues. There's a journalist doing a stand-up over there. I'm giving you guys a quick run around Kennedy Space Center.
Perfect. That was awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. So why don't we get started as people continue trickling in? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rachel Lyons, and I'm the Executive Director of Space for Humanity. Space for Humanity is a nonprofit organization working to sponsor people from all over the world to go to space so they can experience our planet from space and then come back down and share that experience with our communities. So today is extremely exciting because we have 2 additional humans who are having this. We have this launch that is really marking the expansion of access to space for all of us. And we are lucky enough to have Robin Seamangle, who is joining us live from the Space Coast, live from where this is all happening. So Robin, why don't we just dive in and show us around, show us what you're experiencing right now.
All right, I'm gonna try to turn around here. And there you go. You have the clock. It might be backwards for you guys, but
Oh, you're killing it.
we have 52. Loretta!
That's awesome.
We have 52 minutes on the clock. We've got the American flag flying high.
So
We got the NASA vehicle assembly building.
that we're going?
Huh?
It's is it safe to assume it's happening? There's no weather call?
I can't make that determination right now because I am used to Florida and how fast things change here. As of right now, I think they're going through the process. The astronauts are already on Crew Dragon, and they're going to decide in a few minutes.
Yeah,
whether it's
45
gonna be-
minutes before is typical.
Yeah, because they're going to start fueling soon. Sorry. And once they start fueling, that's a really good sign. That means that things are looking positive for launch.
Well, I'd love to invite up Andy Aldrin. Just talk a little bit about the history of space and what got us to this point. Welcome.
Hey, Rachel, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. It's so exciting. So you've been part of the space sector since you were a little boy in a way, because you had family members who went to the moon and had that experience. So
Yeah, you know, for most of you out there, you had to like go to the space program. It kind of came home every night for me. So, I mean, space was everywhere. Alan Bean lived directly behind our house, which is kind of ironic, but.
Yeah. So tell me, how have you seen it evolve, and what are you excited about for the future?
So, you know, after the moon mission, we went for a long time, just kind of slowly making progress. And it was just, you know, kind of puzzle solving and learning how to live in space. But what's happened over the last few years is really kind of a fundamental transition. You know, I don't know if it was Arthur C. Clarke or maybe Heinlein said that the Cold War created this artificial salient in space where it was dominated by governments, and at some point we will fill that salient in with commercial activities. And you know, today is a huge step along those lines. It's a big step towards a transition away from a paradigm that's sort of dominated by government investment to one that I think is going to be dominated by commercial investment. And it's happening, you know, in stages, but this is a really, really important event that government, and this has not been easy for NASA or anyone who's been in the program, to step back and let industry, the commercial sector, take on a lot of the risk. So it's a huge deal.
So exciting. So exciting. And what do you want to say to just everyone who's listening? Like, I'm sure there's people who are listening who watched the Apollo era and watched those launches, and now they're here and they're part of this.
The rocket's not as big. No. Don't forget the significance of the day. I mean, I think you'll all look back on this in 10 years and think of this as a real watershed and you know, kind of the human development of space. I mean, we're moving from just exploration and government activity to, you know, people developing space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why don't we pause it and take a look at the NASA live stream and tune into what's happening there.
We're looking at one cell between the radar and the pad. We're keeping our fingers crossed that conditions will improve, but we're going to be watching that for about another 15 minutes. So it looks like we're going to be good to begin propellant load once we hear the pulse, but we still have to get the get the range green so that we can actually do the launch in just 47 minutes from now. Let's listen to Countdown Net for a moment.
So exciting for the possibilities of human spaceflight and just what our future could look like. Thank you, Andy, so much for joining us for this conversation today. I'd like to invite on Frank White next.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So for those who don't know, Frank White is, he's the author of The Overview Effect, and he coined the term overview effect. So in his work, he's interviewed 40 plus astronauts on talking about their experience. So I'm going to assume, Frank, that most of our attendees do know about the overview effect and about the overview effect experience. So, but from your words, I want to hear, like, what is this experience that all these astronauts have in common? What is it, and why is it significant?
Yeah, well, thanks, Rachel. The overview effect is a shift in awareness, in consciousness, in worldview.
Does she know me?
Really,
yeah, she does.
It's an understanding of who we are and where we are in the universe. And it's something that almost every astronaut will report that they experienced as they looked at the Earth from space and in space, from the moon, as Andy's father did, and as others have from low Earth orbit. They're different people, so they describe it differently, but some of the common reports are that it's a little surprising, even though they expect it. They don't see borders and boundaries. They see a whole system that needs a whole systems approach to the problems we face. They're struck by the thinness of the atmosphere that protects us from the harsh environment of outer space. And in summary, you know, astronauts consistently say something a lot of people have been saying in the response to the COVID crisis. I got that we're all in this together. No matter how different that person over there is from you, or that person is from you, we're all human. We're all earthlings, as Nicole Stott would say.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Frank. And yeah, it's amazing to see. I mean, right now we have more than 500 people on this call, I'm sure from countries all over the world. And it's so amazing to see how like this collective can come behind this and we can really unite for this shared mission. And I'm very excited because we have our host is officially in the call, Sarah Cruddas. I'd like to invite on. So sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. But yeah, now Sarah, ready for you to take it over. I have the privilege of working with Sarah. She serves as on the board of directors of Space for Humanity. She's also a television presenter, space journalist, author, and host of Contact on Discovery Channel and Science Channel. So without further ado, Sarah, why don't you just take it over and enjoy?
You know, I think we can launch Americans back to space from US soil, but I can't get Zoom to work. That's what we're seeing here. It's an on-Earth technological problem, but it's just a huge delight to be here. And I want to express my thanks to you, Rachel, and also to you, Frank. Those are powerful words about the impact of seeing the Earth from space, and also the fact that soon many more people will have the chance to see and experience the Earth, and how will that impact life back on Earth? How will going to space change life on Earth? Because so much what we do in space is actually about all of us on Earth. So it's a historic day. I'm sure most of you would love to be on site watching the launch, but instead we're all in our spare bedrooms or offices at home. And really it's a celebration of this new era in space exploration. So I want to invite on now Rick Tomlinson and Joe Landon to discuss the future of human space exploration.
I think it's a long time coming. First of all, this is the SpaceX team has put in a decade of work here to reach this achievement that hopefully we'll see today. I think it's an incredible achievement for the space industry in general, but also the United States to have the capability to launch astronauts into space again. And two things make me excited. One, I think this gets the world a little bit closer to me going to space someday. I could have a little bit more hope there, but also it's the first of many achievements that we're likely to see over the coming years. I mean, there's other programs and particularly Artemis Program, which I'm very excited about, and others that are going to be really in close succession after this launch, which is really exciting.
And part of your role at Lockheed is actually working on the Artemis program. Can you just talk a little bit more about that, particularly for people who might not know as much, and what this launch means for returning human beings to the moon?
Yeah, so speaking about the Artemis program is the NASA's program to send the first woman and the next man to the surface of the moon by 2024. And just recently, NASA has selected a number of contractors and teams, including Lockheed Martin and Blue Origin and others, to start work on this really ambitious program. And we're excited to be a part of that with our the lead for our team, which is Blue Origin, and excited to bring the capabilities that we've been developing, including the Orion program, to help the United States and the world get back to the moon.
Rick, looking further afield, what do you think would you say this is a turning point in the way that we explore space?
Yes, actually, I think this is the beginning of the end of humanity just exploring space and beginning the first steps of inhabiting space. I did want to give a shout out, I'd written a little piece on this, but I want to give a shout out to all of the activists and volunteers and people that worked on this for about 25 years in the different space organizations, trying to forge the right kind of policies and things like that. Change the conversation was one of the best terms I ever heard about it, so that we could start talking about space, moving from a government domain to one where the people can engage and do all those great things they do, which is, by the way, create a lot of wealth to pay for the government. Yeah, I think we're getting ready to transition. And another point I like to explain to people when they talk about Jeff and Elon, for example, and they say, oh, look, it's the rich boys and their toys, or what kind of business plan is that? And I like to point out to them that what we're seeing here, particularly in their case and in many of our cases, they aren't necessarily doing space to make money. They made money so they can make this happen in space. And that's a critical thing for people to understand. And along with Joe and people in other segments of the industry and such, there are a lot of people out there that are true believers that it's time to really go out there and expand the human domain.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Rick Tomlinson and Joe Landon. So I'm now going to invite to the stage Kaz Anvar and Loretta Whiteside. Hopefully if Kaz and Loretta are there. And just a reminder as well, we're now 22 minutes until launch and everything seems to be going ahead as normal. So Kaz is there. Welcome, Kaz. How's it going? Oh, can't hear you. Microphone.
Unmute. There we go.
You know, I think we had more issues with Zoom than getting humans into space right now.
All right. I'm like a kid in a candy shop right now, and I'm so thrilled, so excited. This is like the first time in my lifetime that I've participated in any kind of a launch. Everything before this, I had never been involved in, and it's absolutely. I'm more excited now than like when I got the role for my show.
And we have to mention, because obviously you're an actor in a show called The Expanse, which a lot of space fans love, but it does almost portray somewhat of a dystopian view of the future. And I just wondered on your thoughts of that and how we can use space exploration for good. And I know this is something you're very passionate about.
I am, yeah. I kind of consider myself a newbie in this world, and a space generalist and an activist in some senses in terms of using space to better humanity. The Expanse, you're right. I think it's incredibly scientifically accurate, and I think our creators and our writers have worked really hard at portraying a version of the future for humanity. I'm very much hoping it is not the version of our future, because as accurate and as compelling and as interesting as it is, I don't want to live in that world where we take all of our garbage and all of our baggage and all of our nonsense that as adolescents of humanity is what we are right now, squabbling. I don't want to take that into space. I'm very much for, pardon my French, but fixing our shit right now before we go up there. I don't want belters being exploited and being used as the workforce, and I don't want superpowers in competition with each other, with the ability to annihilate any one of these planets with just by dropping a rock on someone. We need to be more evolved than that by the time we establish ourselves in space. So as much as I love my show, because I do love my show, it's actually thrilling to be on it. I'm hoping that we as a species can evolve beyond it.
So I'm getting told now it's going to be 2 minutes until the critical weather update. So Loretta, if I can just bring you in momentarily. Obviously, you're a Virgin Galactic future astronaut, and a lot of the work you do is actually about using the vantage point of space, the overview effect, to inspire people and to use space for good.
Yeah, absolutely. The overview effect is all about the power of space to shift our perspective, to give you that feeling of being connected with the whole cosmos, with all of Earth and with everyone on it. And so what I've been struck by today is just, that space is not a spectator sport. That all of us are on this call, watching this launch, like we used to watch, like spectators. And I really want to challenge us to take a bigger leap and be the change we want to see. So if we want to use the Expanse as a cautionary tale and create the culture of the science fiction future that we want, like that we got from the Jedi and we got from Star Trek, that it's going to take each and every one of us on an individual level, putting aside our differences.
Oh, hang on, I'm going to have to pause you there. So sorry, Les. It's a scrub. So we're just getting news, and maybe we can just cut to that means we all get to come back on Saturday, hopefully. But if we can just cut to the NASA feed.
No. Oh.
Taylor has called a scrub for the day. And we got the feedback when the Dragon team informed Bob and Doug. They said we gave it a good try, what they understand, and we are here to try another day. So right now we did officially hold the clock. It looks like a T-minus 16 minutes, 54 seconds.
Oh.
The launch automatic sequence that controls the Falcon 9, the loading of propellants, the cycling of valves, that is also stopped. We now proceed into what is a normal scrub sequence for us. We practice this every launch. So now we move into safely taking the propellants, the pressurization gases back off the first and second stages. as things get into a safe configuration, then we will disarm the escape system on Dragon, and we'll bring the crew access arm back around the spacecraft. So right now, we got down to just inside 17 minutes. The hardware was working very well on both Dragon and spacecraft. We had the fuel loading going on. We had liquid oxygen loading going on, everything but second stage. And the weather just needed a little bit more time to clear the conditions. We didn't have that time because we had an instantaneous window. And so with that, SpaceX launch director had to call upon the input from weather,
Dragon, copies
had to
all, about
call
30
a
minutes.
scrub
Thank
for
you,
the
bye.
day per the safety rules that we have for this flight.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Space for Humanity launch party, round 2. My name is Rachel Lyons, and I'm the Executive Director of Space for Humanity. And I am so excited and grateful to be joined today by Sarah Cruddas. Sarah is on the board of directors of Space for Humanity. And yes. She is a television presenter, space journalist, author, and host of Contact on Discovery Channel and Science Channel. So to start, Sarah, I was thinking we could just chat a little bit about the significance of this launch and the significance of opening up access to space, and then I'll let you take over.
Well, yeah, thanks for that great introduction as well. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone at Space for Humanity for putting on this incredible event, because so many of us would want to be there at Kennedy Space Center right now, or at least stood on Cocoa Beach watching that rocket launch. But this is the next best thing. So I think it's great that the whole community at Space for Humanity has really rallied together. And thank you so much to you, Rachel, for putting on this. You've done a really great job. And this is round 2, because of course we were all here on Wednesday. And we got to 17 minutes before launch, and then the weather just wasn't playing ball. But I know a feeling isn't scientific, but I've got a good feeling that this is the day we're going to launch, and at least we're going to try and be optimistic about this. And just to pick up on your point, Rachel, why this is so significant? I'm sure we'll discuss this as we head on through the next hour or so, but this is really the mark of a new era in the way that we're exploring space. So I like to liken it, and I think I mentioned during our last conversation, is that Apollo is almost like the Columbus moment, and now we're heading into the Mayflower moment in terms of private industries, entrepreneurs, and anyone with an idea eventually being able to access space and to just transform the way that we're able to go for space. So this is not only the first time that US NASA astronauts have launched since July 2011, it's also the first time that NASA astronauts have launched aboard a private spacecraft, the first time that SpaceX have sent crew into space, and we can't underestimate the significance of that, and how at the moment fewer than 600 of us out of the hundreds of billion humans that have ever existed have actually made that journey up to space. Yet all of us are kind of alive in this time where the way we explore space is changing, access is changing, and it's just a privilege to be here today. And I think all of us are privileged to be able to potentially witness this launch in less than an hour's time now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting.
I could talk forever. This is the problem.
I'm loving it. Please do. And yeah, I'm just thinking about this really is like the beginning of something incredible in human history. And I'm really excited for all of the conversations that you're going to have, because, and I know that we chatted about it a little bit a few days ago, but so many of the people that we have online right now are working to create this future in space, whether it's through their engineering projects or through their investments or through the companies that they're founding or through the way that they're using their voice. It's like all of these people are players in this. So yeah, I'm so excited to see where these conversations go.
And just to pick up on that point, I think that's a really great point to make, because when we first started going to space, 59 years ago, when humans first started going to space, it was about military test pilots, and they were all, of course, white and male. And now what we're saying is that space, you don't have to be a scientist to be involved in space. You don't have to be a military personnel. Space is about all of us. Anyone who has a passion for exploration and a curiosity and has looked up at some point can be part of the space industry, be that through investing. What fell, someone's asking, my astronaut fell over. Just to interrupt the conversation. But yeah, space is no longer just about scientists, just about military personnel. It's about all of humanity. And if we want to succeed in moving forward as a species, and you know, SpaceX, their goal, rightly so, is to make humanity a multi-planetary species. If we want to succeed, it has to be about all of us. Space has to be inclusive, and we need different people with different skill sets in order to move forward in space.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so that's exactly what Space for Humanity is working to do. And something that we always bring up is just how exciting it is with companies with private companies going to space, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, and then other ones that are all working on it. But at the same time, the costs are still not accessible to the average human being. So with Space for Humanity working to sponsor people to go and have that overview effect experience and then come back down and share it, it will only exponentially impact that future that we're creating in space, because it'll make everyone see like, oh, this is something that we're really doing and something that's really possible. And what makes Space for Humanity special is that we want to use that for the betterment of life on Earth. Well,
that's exactly, I think that really hits the point on the head, Rachel. And I think what Space for Humanity is doing is incredible, because space, often in the industry, you get this comparison that where we are now with commercial flight is like where we were with aviation 100 years ago. But the difference is, for so long, aviation was only the preserve of the wealthy. But with Space for Humanity, we're trying to democratize access to space and make space something that many more humans can experience. It doesn't matter where you come from, but that you can have that experience, not only of going to space, but most importantly, of no longer looking up, but of looking back from space at Earth, and just that transformative effect that can have on human beings and how they can go back to their community and really inspire people. Because I think more than anything, we need hope right now, and space gives us that hope, that view of the Earth from space, and that realization that we're all in this together. That's huge, and that has a huge benefit for all of us here on Earth.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I think, and that wraps up our conversation. I mean, I think we hit everything that we need to right now. If you want to invite on the next person.
Sure, and I just wanted to add as well, if people want to find out more about our mission at Space for Humanity, I'm sure everyone is following Space for Humanity on social media, but if not, we're at Space Humanity, and just spread the message, share the word, because we need hope and positivity and inspiration more than ever right now. So next we have 3 special guests coming on. All of them were with us last week on Wednesday, even when we couldn't have a full show because the launch was scrubbed. So I'm going to start with a man who doesn't talk that much, and that's Rick Tomlinson, who's the founder of the Space Fund. Rick, are you there? I can't see you, but I can hear you.
He's muted.
He's muted. Okay. We've got Cass Anvar as well, who's an actor from The Expanse, and Joe Landon, who's Vice President of Advanced Project Development at Lockheed Martin. Such a long job title, Joe. So in the absence of Rick then, at the moment, I'm going to start with you, Cass, just to pick up on our conversation from Wednesday. You, as we know, are an actor on a TV show called The Expanse, and I'm going to confess, I only started watching The Expanse last week when I realised I'd be speaking to you. I've watched a lot of it. It's a great show. It gets scary. It gets scary though in parts, so I have to watch it during the day with the lights on. So, but for me, that presents, and we picked up on this point on Wednesday. But just to recap, this almost dystopian view of our space future. But there's so much. Someone else, Bailey, there is saying they are scared too watching The Expanse.
Don't be scared, Bailey.
Do I need to be scared?
Together?
But in terms of this dystopian view it almost portrays, where do you think, and I know this is a big passion of yours, how can we move forward in a positive way in terms of exploring space? I
think the first thing I'd like to do, because of the question you asked and what's going on in the world today, I think we have to address all the chaos that has been happening in the last few days on our own planet. And the question that you asked relates directly to that. And I was excited about coming and doing the SpaceX launch, and I was telling my friends about it, and some of my best friends, they were like, I can't get excited about it right now because of everything that's going on. And it seems so disconnected. And I had to think about it. And I had to think about, what does this launch mean for humanity, not just for the space industry? And the things that we're struggling through right now, which are reflected in the show, is this inner conflict, this racism, this othering of each other. And ultimately, the scientists and the people that are trying to get us into space, and what this particular launch represents, is not just some scientific achievement. Everything that's going to happen from this point on, once we successfully get ourselves back in there, create some kind of permanent residence on the moon, is for the betterment of humanity. And I don't think a lot of the people that are not directly involved in the industry of space exploration realize that. They feel very disconnected from it. They feel like it's Rich Boys Club and it's just unnecessary science. Right now we're struggling on our planet. And so to answer your question very indirectly, Sarah, I'm very hopeful that we can avoid the type of future that The Expanse presents. I'm in love with the show. I'm in love with the writing. I think it's an incredibly accurate view if we don't change our equation. And what's happening right now on our planet is an indication of where we could be going. Simultaneously, we're launching the first crewed ship in 10 years with the intention of bringing that to Mars and setting something up on the moon, which for the people who don't really realize it, is going to elevate humanity. The science, the technology, the discoveries that we come from, the resources that are out there. We don't even know yet what we're going to discover. We don't even know yet how we're going to solve these issues, but we can't have racism. We can't have that kind of hatred. It's too deadly. Space is too deadly to have what's happening on this planet out there. We're all going to just wipe ourselves out. So we have to overcome those problems. We can't live in an expanse type scenario and survive space. And so that's how I was forced to do a lot of thinking with all the news that's been going on. And that's kind of what I want to say to the people that I care about and the people who might be wondering, why are we so focused on this? And I think, yeah, we do have to clean up our house here. We do have to fix what's happening on the planet. That doesn't mean we stop evolving and growing and questing and searching, because those things will, in the medium to long term, help us do that.
I think there's so many points I could pick up on that. I think, first of all, thank you for recognizing the current situation as well. I think it's important that we don't ignore the realities which are going on in the world. I just wanted to break. We've got a note from NASA that we're actually currently go for launch on the weather. Woohoo! So hopefully we'll be able to get there earlier than 17 minutes. I think we're just crossing over to NASA right now. Can anyone hear that?
Into the design of that ship and the operations. These new ships have complete medical facilities, an operational helipad, and redundant communications, power, and propulsion to make sure they're robust and ready for anything we encounter offshore. We've also done tons of training exercises with SpaceX team, the NASA team, and the rescue forces I mentioned earlier, practicing capsule recovery.
Okay, well, we can bring it back
emergency
to Cass now. So Cass, I just wanted to pick up, I think you've made some fantastic points. One thing I think is important to note with, well, two things actually. One, what you were saying is so similar to something Michael Collins said after he and the crew of Apollo 11 returned from the moon, and he was speaking to Congress, and he talked about how they kept going. There were still problems on Earth, but when you're out there, and he was alone, obviously, in orbit around the moon, and he spoke to Congress, and he said how he looked both ways, because he could look back at Earth, and he could see Earth, and there were still problems back on Earth, but then he could also, on the far side of the moon, away from Earth, away from communication, completely isolated, he could look out into the vastness of space and could see where we were going in our space future. So I think it's hugely important to know. And then also the second point is the International Space Station in many ways is worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize, because you've got all that collaboration for nations that don't necessarily get on together, but actually working together in space for the benefit of humanity. What would you like to see over the coming years, and how do you think you can use your voice and your profile to unify people about why what we're doing in space matters?
First of all, I want to give an acknowledgement to Rick Tomlinson, who we've got with us today, because he's the first person in this industry that I met that made me feel like I belonged here. We were walking in the street in Austin, and I asked him, I said, is anybody, and this leads to your question, I said, has anybody in this industry thought about kind of the spiritual mental health, kind of emotional aspects of space travel and settlement in space. And he kind of stopped in the middle of the street and looked at me and was like, I can't believe you asked that question. That's exactly the thing I'm working on right now. And he welcomed me in, because up to that point, I've been seeing science, amazing breakthroughs in science. And I started being thrilled, but then I started getting anxious, because if our spiritual growth doesn't match our technological growth, we're in trouble. And we've kind of seen signs of that. What I'd like to see in the future is the space industry not reflecting or not copying the mistakes of our past. I feel like I can forgive a few of the things from our past history with regards to nationalization, with regards to kind of the technological revolution and industrialization, because we didn't know, we didn't have the science, we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the knowledge that we now have. We don't have an excuse anymore to make those same mistakes. So I would like to see someone or a body of people with the wisdom and the grace to know that we cannot approach space and plant flags. Unless that flag is blue and green with a big planet on it, we can't plant nationalistic flags. Privatizing, corporated, I have no problem with, because those corporations have to answer to a governing body. And that governing body, in my opinion, should represent the entire planet. And I think privatizing and capitalism are very good things, because space is so hugely expensive. If there is no financial incentive, nothing will get done. But doing it in the name of a country, doing it in the name of, it's going to become about skin color, it's going to become about language, it's going to become about all sorts of things we don't want. And you made a great point. The International Space Station is a perfect microcosm of how the big picture should work. People from everywhere working together, speaking the same language scientifically, going for the same goals, sharing the resources, and no fights, no bullets flying, and no flags being planted. So that's what I would like to see, is that wisdom being executed in the next few years before it becomes too late.
I think you may, and Rick, do you want to pick up on those points as well? Because it's
I'm going to start, as I usually do, with controversy and call out my friend Kaz on not telling the story correctly.
Oh, shoot.
Not giving himself enough credit, because what happened was we were at this combination science fiction convention, etc. We were walking across the street, and Kaz said to me that when people, Rick, you know, I know what you're into all this stuff. He said, when people are living in these really harsh conditions, and, you know, it's going to be dark and gloomy, and they're going to be faced with death every day and all of this. And he said, do you think they're going to have to hang on to something really spiritual and strong and something that's beyond themselves? And I did stop in the middle of the intersection and go, like, dude, you've already got it, right? I mean, you know, he was being humble what he just said then. He's got it. And I was like, okay, you're coming in. I'm slipping the chip into your neck, dude. You're coming in. So, yeah, it was great stuff, Kaz. And we're so happy.
What we do need to do, Sarah, is we have to get these opinions and these views that the scientific community shares, like what Rick just said. Because I'm an actor, I'm an artist. I'm coming into this with a very kind of, my job is to tell truths, compelling truths, and to provoke questions, and to elevate the human condition by showing people the mirror. That's my job. Nobody knows that the scientific community is also about truth, discovery of truth, and that you guys share pretty much an identical path to an artistic team. You guys want to elevate humanity, and you want to discover truth. A lot of humanity that is not in the industry of space doesn't know that. They think it is gratuitous. They think it is elitist. They think it is expensive, and it doesn't represent the rest of humanity. And I think that if a portion of the industry applies some resources to communicating to the layman, we can get space and science enthusiasm, make it sexy again the way it was back in the Apollo era, where you had how many billion people watching the moon launch, which now, because of the world has grown, the media, the information is much more bombarding. We're saturated with information. Space isn't as sexy as it used to be. And a lot of people are misunderstanding what our point is, what the industry's point is. And I think if we get the general audience on board, you're going to have a much easier job and a much more enthusiastic job getting to our next step.
Right. And I think those are all great points once again, but I think that is changing. I think the last rocket launch I was at was the SpaceX Falcon Heavy one, and the atmosphere, you know, obviously I wasn't around for Apollo, and most of us on this call one, but it's that excitement that we're finally seeing again about space, and people are realizing that it's about all of us, and that art, you know, and I like to think that actually science and art, they almost go hand in hand, you know, and there is no Earth without art. Let's use that cliche. And some of the greatest things to come from space exploration, aside from the science and the technology, are the images of our Earth as seen from space, particularly the Apollo 8 Earthrise image. And I'm just going to interject right now because we're T-minus 29 minutes and we're still go for launch as far as I'm aware. So I just wanted to update people on that. Cass, this is the problem. We've got so many incredible guests. We need
Absolutely.
like 6 hours. We should have started. I'm just going to move to Rick and then across to Joe. But Rick, you wrote a piece today about this launch and how it wasn't a bad thing if there was a scrub on Wednesday, and how it wouldn't be a bad thing if there was a scrub today. Can you just elaborate a bit?
Yeah, actually, I wrote the piece Wednesday night, and I was lamenting the idea that the launch might happen, and then we would have Trump giving a speech, and would all happen on a day that we had 100,000 corona dead on the same day. And that juxtaposition is not one that I wanted glued to this moment for all of history. I rewrote it this morning and sent it out, and I talk about it, I just posted it to the attendees, that if it doesn't fly today, or tomorrow, and gets put off for a week or so, that's not such a bad thing. Because yes, we want to give people good news, but they have to be in a place where they can hear good news. And right now, if this came out, as it comes out, what the headline might read is Trump celebrates billionaire rocket launch while cities burn, and et cetera, et cetera. And there'll be this split screen of him declaring America being better than, and you've got people rioting. And I don't want to see that. I've worked, and many of us have worked many years. I've spent about 30 years on this. Joe, everybody else, a lot of the other people here have worked a long time on this. I want to see this moment deserve the purity, or get the purity that it deserves. There will be a looking back at this moment, if it's successful, when it's successful, as the moment when regular people began to fly into space, when we started to, and this is the key transition, to transition from the Lewis and Clark phase to the phase where pioneers and settlers began to open space. This is the moment, the exact moment where you're crossing the Mississippi or the Missouri, and you're a regular person and you're not a government employee anymore. And so we're going to start seeing that happening more and more. We have to work on how we describe this to the world. We have to work on how we put it out there in terms of bringing people in. You know, I can see the headline right now over on the Trump side. I have problems with that, but over on the left side, two white guys ride billionaire rocket while Trump gives speech about how great America is. You know, you can see that.
Hey Rick.
And I don't want.
Livingston.
Go ahead.
Let me push on you a little bit, because I don't know how many folks on the here are people of color, but I don't mind them both being displayed at the same time, because it is the truth of America. Mm-hmm. It is our truth. You know, when you look at my my MSc class, I was the only African American in that class. When you look at so many things that I have done, I'm usually the only dark face, or one of very few dark faces in the room. It's changing. It changed significantly with the shuttle, but the inequities across racial and economic lines are still gargantuan. So the fact that it showed that you have two pictures in the press about riots over here on the left and success in space over here on the right, or whichever way you want to put them, is the truth of our society. You know, go back to when we first launched to the moon. It was not too dissimilar. The snapshot is that you can go back to 1969 and the conditions were space and riots, and you can come to 2020 and the conditions are space and riots. So it says that technology is moving forward, but there's something else socially that is not. We are absolutely stuck in certain regards. It's, you know, the fact that I squeezed through the door is interesting, but I felt like I had to squeeze through the door because it was not open. I had to, you know, kind of push my way through. So this is reality. Don't deny the realism of what, you know, of what the world is like right now. We can aspire to a more just and even society, but we are not there.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the, let's call it, correction you're offering there, Livingston. I'm saying
Rick, I'm just going to interject just because we're tight on time. If you just want to give like a 30-second wrap up for Livingston, if that's all right.
Yeah, my point is that I don't necessarily, I don't disagree at all, Livingston. Absolutely right. These moments will stand together, and it is a snapshot of the time. I just, whenever possible, don't necessarily want to hand these beautiful moments over to people that will use them the wrong way.
Yeah, and people will use information however it suits their leanings. That is the story of history. And the challenge is when you're far enough away from it to look back and say, okay, what was going on in the world? Not just the United States. The United States is a microcosm, but what was going on in the world? Were these events of space technology, were these advancements in space, you know, I'll use the term democratization. I'm not thrilled by the term, but I think people get it. Were those things that were beneficial to the society writ large? Were they helpful? When you looked at the shuttle program, there was a very specific effort made to include people of color and women. Before the shuttle, you know, not in the U.S. So that push actually helped elevate. It's because of that push, you know, that I had the opportunities that I have. So it's important because space and technology can lead the way. They cannot be divorced from our social responsibilities. And so I think that is important to make sure that, you know, as technology advances, we bring society, period.
Yeah, I think we violently agree in our own way. Absolutely.
Yep.
I think those are all great points. We've got Joe here. What I'm going to do is, Joe, if you're okay to wait 10 minutes, and we'll come to Livingston, because obviously this is a great conversation, then we'll come back to you to discuss the future ahead of the launch, because we're now T-minus 21 minutes to launch.
If I could just add, can I just add one thing to the end of this conversation? You know, I agree with Rick and Cass and Livingston. I think too often within the space industry and other industries, we focus on the technology and the science without considering the humanity and other challenges in the world that science takes place in, right? So this is, you know, I actually look to science fiction as a way to put that guidepost out ahead, you know, to paint that vision for how things could be. And, you know, this is why, you know, I'm a big fan of The Expanse, right? And the crew of the Rocinante is a great inspiration, a great group of heroes, because they're all different, right? It's Earthers, Belters, and Martians working together, and they're often trying to do the right thing and standing up against injustice. And, you know, I'd like to see our teams, you know, do more of that.
I think those are great points, and I think yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic points. And I'm gonna it'd be great now, Livingston, to actually hear a bit more about your story, and then we'll come back to you, Joe, in a second, because you work on so much amazing stuff, and we need an hour at least with each of our panelists. But it's better to have too little time than too much spare. So Livingston, if you're just able to tell us a bit more about your story, then. So you were a US Air Force astronaut.
Yeah, let's. I always try to start at the beginning. I have a penchant for a little bit of starting with history, but my history was in Detroit. In my neighborhood, you know, suffered, you know, a bit during the '65 riots. So that's the neighborhood that I come from. And the important factor was my parents pushed hard for the education of all the children. So, you know, I have sisters that are doctors. I have sisters that are educators. I have sisters that, you know, have pushed forward, and I happen to be the outlier in that group and wanted to be an engineer. But because my parents focused on education, it transcended many other things. So we moved to Louisville. I got, you know, I had pretty good grades, got accepted to the Air Force Academy, went there. Still the minority population at the Air Force Academy, you know, still pretty small. There were times when I thought about leaving, stuck through it, graduated degree in astronautical engineering. Got assigned to Vandenberg Air Force Base and started pushing rockets into the sky with classified payloads on it. Got an opportunity as the Air Force started to say, what can we do to leverage the space shuttle, because the DoD paid for about half the development cost of the shuttle, you know, to sign up as a manned space flight engineer. My eyes are terrible, so I couldn't be a pilot. So I didn't have an option to be a pilot on the shuttle, or a pilot at all. So I worked very, very hard to become as smart as I could about systems flying in space, and that got me a payload specialist slot with a classified payload. So in that class, it was you know, we had about 3,000 applicants, 14 people accepted, and it was a pretty interesting challenge. But you go through a lot of what NASA goes through, but we did it separately because our missions were different. We were all flying classified missions. We were flying things that were clearly not going to be made public. So it was a bigger challenge for us to train almost in secret. And then when Challenger went down, you know, that was a struggle for all of us. Two of our cadre had flown, and the rest of us were still stuck on the ground. So it was an interesting time, but the transition was there was enough friction between NASA and the Air Force that none of the MSEs that flew, Bill Pales and Gary Payton, actually made it into the NASA cadre, even though they applied. So others of us looked at that and said, if the guys that flew didn't make it, what chance do we have? Because the friction, political friction, was still so high, even though it was a system that was trying to bring us forward. The politics was still there. So I ended up leaving the Air Force a few years later and going to work for Boeing on space stations. So a lot of the hardware that the astronauts are flying to has my fingerprints on it, because I did a lot of the human factors engineering for things inside the International Standard Payload Rack. Was one of my achievements that I take a lot of credit for, along with the teams from Japan and Europe, in putting that together. So that's the quickest way I can get through my history before launch. But it's been an interesting journey.
We're still looking good for the launch, so we're just we're at the T-17 mark, so this is about as far as we got on Wednesday. Livingston, just to pick up on that point, because you mentioned the huge contributions that you've made to human spaceflight, but also there must be that personal frustration there about not actually getting to achieve that dream today of actually going to space yet. But I think so much of what we do in space exploration actually is about embracing things not going the way we plan them to go, and overcoming hurdles.
Yeah, I run into a lot of people that say, man, you handled the fact that you didn't get to fly really, really well. I said, well, yeah, you kind of missed me, 2 years, crying like a baby on the living room floor. But that's a little exaggeration. But it was hard. It was hard. But what happens is, no matter, something's going to happen in your life. And a lot of times when I talk to students, I say, aim high. It's an old Air Force saying, aim high. Because if you still don't get the top goal that you're shooting for, you'll still be higher than if you just aim for the middle, or just this is safe, let's stay low. So I always shoot for what the most of my life can be. I encourage others to do it. And you have to have a balance between your aspirations and what in the reality that life doles out for you. So you have to have that balance, because if you don't, you end up being depressed or feeling bad about things, or you end up with an attitude that is counterproductive. So always keep that attitude positive. Look forward. Look from this spot forward, kind of like a trajectory optimizer. You look from the spot you're in, your current state vector, forward to where you want to go. That way you'll get as close as you possibly can to your goal. So that's what I encourage people to do is always look forward.
I think that's such an interesting point to raise, because obviously we were talking earlier about art and science, how going to space isn't just about art, just about science, and it's also about art, it's about unity. But actually, I think what we hear from you, Livingston, is it's also about inspiration. And, astronauts are, of course, heroes, and all the other people who work in the space industry, but it's the stories behind there, the stories behind embracing failures, the stories behind the people who might not have made it in the history books, but of how they contributed towards human successes. And I think the point you make about looking forward is something that we can all embrace with our own lives. It doesn't matter what career path we're following. It's something that is hugely important.
True. And I think I think you're right, because everybody's born with different skills, different capabilities, etc. My issue was my eyes. If I had pilot qualification, I would have gone on a pilot track. My path toward astronaut would have been easier. A lot of Air Force Academy graduates or shuttle pilots. But that wasn't my fate. I had poor eyes. So you have to take what you have, the reality of what you have, and use it to the best of your ability. I'm very fortunate. I've got, full use of all my limbs. I've got a fairly well-functioning brain. A lot of folks struggle with things that, we think of as basic, but they still have to optimize their life. They still are aspirational. So what is it that, we can do to help them? Because I see people with disabilities that just seem to have boundless hope, enthusiasm, and we all start at different spots. We gotta cheer for all of us.
And these are great points. I'm just very wary of time now, because we are now T-minus 13 minutes. So just very quickly, Livingston, how do you think those guys are feeling right now? They're T-minus 13 minutes from launch. What do you think is going through their head?
Well, the closest thing I have to it is being on console, getting ready to put a satellite in orbit. And I remember one time a boss came by, or one of my seniors came by and said, he was kind of angry at us because he said, you guys are cracking jokes, and or you're kidding around. There's a certain point at which your preparedness can't go any further, and so you break some of that tension with levity. And then there's a point where you're starting to get really, really close, where everything is ticky boom, ticky boom. You don't have to see the procedures to know what's coming next, because you have looked at them so long. So the ability to look at it's kind of like if you play piano, the music might be in front of you, but if you've played a piece long enough, the notes are only as a reference on the page. And at this point, this close, that's what they're doing. Everything around them is only as a reference, because all of their training has taught them what they're going to do and what they're going to do next. The feelings that they're going to have, the push of G-forces in their back, they've experienced that before, so so it won't be novel to them. The views that they're going to get is going to be novel. Their focus is going to be on their screens, not trying to crane their neck to look out the window too much. So it's going to be very much down the center line of everything they've trained for, from flying as test pilots to training for this mission, to go absolutely down the center of the corridor. And so the rest of the world will slow down and almost disappear. What they hear in their ears from the mission controllers, what they see on their consoles, will consume all the processing power of their brain the moment we get down to T0.
Well, that's an excellent insight, and we're now T-minus 11 minutes. So thank you so much, Livingston. I'm going to invite now Joe Landon back as well. Thank you. And also Dylan Taylor, who is the founder of Space for Humanity. So Joe, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Sarah.
We've got too many great panelists. We need like an hour and a half at least with all of you. Obviously, your role at Lockheed is looking to the future of space exploration and Artemis and landing human beings on the moon. Just very quickly, can you summarize how significant this mission is for returning human beings to the moon? How is this the next step?
So this SpaceX mission today is an incredible next step, and like you said, I'm working on the next step, which is going back, taking people to the surface of the moon. And if I could just very quickly summarize the Artemis program for folks who may have not may not know about it. So Artemis is NASA's new program to develop the systems and technology to bring the first woman and the next man to set foot on the moon by 2024. And the next milestone for Artemis is the Artemis One mission, which is scheduled for 2021, which will be the first uncrewed test of the Orion spacecraft and the Space Launch System, followed by a crewed test flight, and then Artemis 3 will be the first crewed mission going to the South Pole of the moon with humans on board.
Which is just incredible. And what are we looking the next 2024 still for this? Is that correct?
That's right, by 2024.
So that's incredible. And just, yeah, we're now less than T-minus 10 minutes. So I'm going to thank you very much, Joe. I apologize we didn't get enough time with you. Before we cut to the SpaceX, but if you want to hang around, Joe, for the after party, you're more than welcome to, because I'm sure everyone listening would love to know more about Artemis and the work that you're doing. But before we head to the SpaceX launch coverage, I want to welcome Dylan Taylor, who, for everyone who works in the space industry, no one has anything but amazing things to say about Dylan Taylor. So it's just a privilege to have you here, and a privilege that, for everything you're doing for Space for Humanity. And I just wondered, Dylan, if you could just talk us through not only the significance of this launch, but the significance for your mission as well to democratize access to space.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sarah, and thanks for the kind words. And let me just say, Livingston, Kaz, Rick, your remarks, I can't even put words to it. I actually teared up when Livingston was talking earlier. I think, you know, fundamentally Space for Humanity was founded under the principle that space is a lot of things. It's a technical challenge. It's a harsh environment. It's the next frontier, but fundamentally, and probably most importantly, is it's a tool for transformation. Because it's the one thing I know of that allows us to see ourselves from a different perspective, the entire world see itself from a different perspective. And I think, in my mind, part of the reason these issues are intractable and we haven't solved them in 50 years or 100 years is because we have the wrong perspective. And so that's fundamentally the premise behind Space for Humanity. Yes, we want to democratize space. Yes, we want to get everyday citizens to space, but we also want it to be a social movement, and we want it to be an enlightening, you know, food for the spiritual journey, as Cass said earlier. And so I just want to acknowledge our board, which is world-class. I want to acknowledge Rachel Lyons, who's done an amazing job leading this organization. And I just want to acknowledge the remarks that were made here today, which I just find very gratifying and very inspirational. So with that, Sarah, back to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dylan. And I can't believe this, but we're now T-minus 7 minutes. The NASA coverage is obviously, it's delayed slightly, but we're now going to cut to the live launch coverage. And hopefully when I speak to you in the next 20 minutes or so, these two astronauts, Bob Beck and Doug Hurley, would have launched to space for the first time since 2011 for US NASA astronauts from US soil. So please enjoy the coverage, and we'll see you on the other side, I hope.
We've heard the call out. Stage 1 engine chill has started. That's gone up to the crew so that they've got situational awareness. As I mentioned, the pre-valves are open. And now we are topping off first stage fuel, getting ready to finish the fuel load. Liquid oxygen load on first and second stage will continue until the last 3 to 2 minutes of the countdown.
We should hear that call out, RP1 load complete, coming up in about 6 minutes. Again, RP1 is just that densified kerosene, or that rocket fuel that Falcon 9 is going to be used to power Bob and Doug to orbit today.
And stage 1 fuel is closed out.
Right on time. That call out indicates that the fuel loading on the first stage is complete. Draining back the lines now. So first stage and second stage fuel are complete. Liquid oxygen loading is continuing on both stages. You can see on the view on the left side of the monitor, the condensation, the cold gas wrapped around the stages as the tank skins are chilled by the densified liquid oxygen, picking up the humidity from the Florida air.
looks like at this moment we're a little more than 90% full on the oxidizer on the first stage, ticking up towards that 80% mark on the second stage. We'll be counting down all the way till about 2 or 3 minutes, as John and I just said, until everything is loaded in
Falcon 9
Falcon
heaters
9.
closing out.
And then we will be go for launch.
Dragon has transitioned to configure for terminal count. Vehicle tanks pressing for strongback retract.
We're pressurizing the Falcon 9 tanks. We're going to open the clamp arm around the second stage and begin to retract the strongback. We'll move back about 2 degrees. That'll get us to the liftoff position. At liftoff, the strongback will then recline about 45 degrees away.
Started. Stage 2, RP1 bleed.
Launch director called out the strongback retract has started. On the left, you'll see it go back just a couple of degrees.
Stage 1, RP1 bleed.
We are just 4 minutes away from liftoff. Again, at this moment, Bob and Doug are really just laser focused on those displays. They have insight directly into Dragon and the Falcon 9. They're able to see where their fuel loading is at, how everything's progressing down with the count.
AFTS final setup started.
Three and a half minutes from launch.
And the strongback is now reclining away from the Falcon 9.
MVAC igniter purges. Pogo bleed. Dragon has transitioned to terminal count and is on internal power. Stage 1, LOX load closed out.
Okay, we're at T-minus 2 minutes, 42 seconds. Stage 1 LOX load is closed out. Stage 2 will continue to load for about another half a minute or so. Once we get the completion of Stage 2 LOX loading, we have to vent down the line. So you'll see another large white cloud coming off of the strongback. That'll be normal. That'll happen
Vehicle
around
is transitioning to
T-minus
internal power.
1 minute and 40 seconds. We're going on internal power now.
Just a few seconds away from the Stage 2 LOX load being complete. It's been almost 9 years since we've been in this position. A lot of work done by thousands of people to get to this point. All our eyes focused on 2 now.
Stage 2 LOX load is closed out. Propellant fills are complete. Dragon is in auto idle.
Stage 2 LOX load complete. All fuel, all oxidizer on Falcon 9. 1 minute, 34 seconds to go till launch.
Ground gas closeouts is starting.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Dragon is in countdown. FTS is armed for launch.
Under a minute now, the FTS, the flight termination system, has been armed.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, we're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
America has launched. So rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream. 20 seconds into flight, stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 30 seconds into this historic mission. Flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9, and look at them go.
Falcon power telemetry nominal. M1D throttle down.
We're throttling down to get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket. Reports say all systems are go.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
M1D throttle up.
We're throttling back up to full power as we're through max Q.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
And we heard that 1 Bravo call out. That's just the second abort zone that they're in. They'll continue to be on this until the first stage has done its job and they switch over to the second. At this point, Bob and Doug pulling about 2.3 Gs, 2.3 times the Earth's gravity, already moving at over 1,500 miles per hour.
We've heard the call out for MVAC engine chill. That's getting the MVAC engine ready to light. That'll come at about 2:44 into flight. Right now, everything continuing to look good. Next major event coming up is going to be the triple. We'll have main engine cutoff of the 9 first stage engines, stage separation, and then ignition of the second stage engine to continue to carry astronauts into orbit. Coming up in about 20 seconds.
M1D throttle down.
We heard we're throttling down the Merlin engines on the first stage. And we have Miko.
Miko.
2 Alpha.
Falcon stage separation confirmed. Copy, 2 Alpha. MVAC ignition.
All right, we have stage separation confirmed. The first stage beginning its flight back. The second stage being powered by that single Merlin 1D vacuum engine has ignited and is now carrying Bob and Doug into orbit. So they're going to continue under the power of this second stage.
Stage 2 propulsion is nominal.
Which will cut off at SECO, or second engine cutoff, at about 8 minutes and 44 seconds into today's flight. So a little over 5 minutes to go still on this second stage. You heard the call out 2 Alpha, so they're now in the longest abort zone that carries them all the way from about North Carolina up the eastern seaboard, almost to Canada. Things looking good, though, getting good call outs, nominal propulsion on that second stage. Bob and Doug continuing to make their way into orbit.
Dragon SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Acquisition of signal in Bermuda.
SpaceX Dragon nominal trajectory.
All right, here in nominal trajectory, so Dragon pointed in the right direction, continuing to make their flight uphill. Heard acquisition of signal Bermuda. That's one of the other ground stations that they're using to get telemetry and data back from this spacecraft.
Stage 2 propulsion is still nominal.
little over 4 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. Bob and Doug flying at more than 5,600 miles
Dragon
per hour.
SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Already almost 200 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Nominal trajectory continuing. And while they continue uphill, looks like we are getting a view of the first stage as well.
Up on your right screen, you can see that first stage with the grid fins deployed. It's making its way back to attempt to land on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You today. And we're just about a couple minutes away from the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the 9 Merlin engines do ignite to help slow the vehicle down as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. And then after the entry burn will be the landing burn, which is just a single engine
Dragon SpaceX nominal trajectory.
And you heard
nominal
starting chill for entry burn. There's that call out. They are still on a nominal trajectory on Dragon, still on second stage, and that's that MVAC engine on second stage on your left screen. Again, on your right screen is that first stage booster coming back towards our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. We're about a minute away from entry burn.
Meanwhile, that second stage continuing to power Dragon into orbit. Again, if you're keeping an eye on that timer, that's going to continue to burn until 8 minutes and 44 seconds into flight. So a little over 2 minutes from now, we'll hear the call out SECO. It'll then be a little
Stage 2 propulsion is still good.
A little over 3 minutes until Dragon physically separates from the second stage of the Falcon 9 after the upper
Dragon
stage gets a
SpaceX
chance.
nominal trajectory.
Dragon copies, nominal trajectory.
Continuing to check in with Bob and Doug as they are on a nominal trajectory. Just about 10 seconds away from that first stage, starting that entry burn on your right screen. We should be able to see that view live.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there is that entry burn beginning. This burn lasts about 36 seconds long.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
While that entry burn continues, we're just about a minute away from SECO. We'll have a number of events all happen in rapid succession. It'll be the second engine cutoff.
Stage 1
we'll
entry
be
burn
looking
shut
for
down.
that stage 1 landing burn shortly after.
Yeah, actually, just within a few seconds of each other. Such a cool view on your left screen, seeing Bob and Doug on Dragon. Right now, you can see the displays that they are seeing right now themselves.
Terminal guidance.
And back throttle step.
We are coming up 25 seconds or so away from SECO, or second engine cutoff.
This is also the point where Bob and Doug are experiencing their highest G-force. We're seeing the counter tick up to right about 1.8.
Copy Shannon.
You heard Shannon, so that just means they're in their final abort zones. If they were to abort at this point, it would either be an abort to orbit or to land off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for second
Stage 1 landing
cutoff
startup.
confirmation.
And back throttle step. And back shutdown. Stage 1 landing liner.
Confirmation of SECO's second engine cutoff.
Now we are waiting for our first stage to make its way to our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You.
Dragon SpaceX nominal orbital insertion.
Yes, confirmation of nominal
Dragon
orbital
copies,
insertion.
nominal orbital insertion.
And what you're seeing on your screen is a live view of our drone ship, where our first stage will be coming down. Looks like we lost that live view, but we'll wait for confirmation of that landing shortly here.
Falcon 9 first stage is successfully landed.
And there you can see on your screen, Falcon 9 has landed. This is the first Falcon 9 to carry humans to orbit, so very exciting for us. And as you can see on your right screen, Bob and Doug are still making their way to their targeted orbit.
M1D to recovery 1.
So exciting today.
M1D.
It doesn't stop.
It does not stop.
All right, we did hear again that call out, good orbital insertion. So that means Falcon 9 and Dragon right now exactly where they're supposed to be.
M1D to FRC on recovery 1.
And it's right at about 12 minutes when Dragon will separate. Looks like we saw a 0G indicator floating around there. I know Bob and Doug owe us a little bit about what exactly that is that they brought up with them.
And before separation, before Dragon initiates separation from the second stage, they do make sure to make, they do ensure that the vehicle is not spinning and it is in good condition before we separate.
That's right. The upper stage does small attitude maneuver using some cold gas thrusters built into the rocket body itself.
Exactly. So we do expect that separation to occur in about a minute from now, but they do wait until they have full confirmation that it is ready to separate. Such cool views. I cannot get over this view that we are seeing right now. Bob and Doug on the right screen inside of Crew Dragon out in space.
Yeah, already 200 kilometers over planet Earth, or a little over 124 miles, traveling in excess of 2,700 meters. 27,000 meters per second, or about 16,000 miles per hour. Again, we're just standing by. That separation event should be coming up shortly. Then they'll begin a series of checks on the Draco thrusters that are going to be used to maneuver and then power Dragon on its flight to the International Space Station. Standing by for separation.
Expected loss of signal, wallops.
It sounds like we had an expected LOS loss of signal with one of the ground stations. Waiting for confirmation now of that.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon separation confirmed.
There is a great view right in front of you of Dragon separating.
Separation confirmed.
And there's that call out. Dragon is now officially making its way to the International Space Station today.
Dragon SpaceX with that separation call. We have a few words for you from our Falcon 9 team.
Standing by.
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to Ground. Bob Doug, on behalf of the entire launch team, thanks for flying with Falcon 9 today. We hope you enjoyed the ride and wish you a great mission.
Thanks, Bala. Congratulations to you and the F9 team for the first human ride for Falcon 9, and it was incredible. Appreciate all the hard work, and thanks for the great ride to space.
Copy all.
Oh, and like, proud of you guys and the rest of the team. Thank you so much for what you've done for us today, putting America back into low Earth orbit from the Florida coast.
Copy all. Good luck. Godspeed.
All right, so Bob and Doug are in
Dragon
space.
SpaceX, we confirm nominal ECLS activation and service section Draco checkouts. Nose cone deploys in progress.
Copy all. We're monitoring.
The Corps here in Hawthorne giving the crew a heads up that we have confirmation the nose cone is just deploying. So again, that nose cone is going to open up a little bit more than 90 degrees, goes up to about, I think, 105 degrees. And that's going to expose the actual docking ring and the hatch that they're going to be going through once they attach to the International Space Station. And also 4 of those Draco thrusters, we call them the forward bulkhead thrusters. They're going to be used for these major phase burns or firings of those thrusters to actually raise their orbit gradually over the coming hours. Also heard good activation of the ECLS, that's the Environmental Control and Life Support System. That's everything controlling their atmosphere, just keeping Dragon a nice, safe, habitable environment where they're going to be living for the next 19 hours until they arrive at the space station.
Right, exactly. And Falcon 9's job may be done for today, but the mission is not over. Crew Dragon's job is not done. As you can see, Bob and Doug are still inside Crew Dragon, making their way. It will be a 19-hour trip to the International Space Station before they dock tomorrow morning. And such cool views. I love that we can get these live views here and see and watch what they're doing now that they are in orbit.
Yeah, it's incredible to just be looking over their shoulder, to be along for the ride. And we're going to be with them, and we're going to be with all of you the entire way for their journey to the space station. We're going to be covering.
Well, wow, thoughts, everyone. Rick, Joe, Livingston, Dylan. We're also joined by Athena. We've got Kaz with us. We've got Frank White, Sarah, Rachel, the whole Space for Humanity team, all of you. Guys, how's everyone feeling?
Well done.
Everybody's crying.
That was insane. So good.
I think, to be honest with you, the weather didn't look great. I wasn't optimistic. You know, I'm wearing my slippers. Like, I've got my NASA t-shirt on and my slippers. I thought, you know, I won't, no need for formal clothes. We're not launching, we're scrubbing. But I just think with the landing of the Falcon 9 first stage as well, it really, I want all of you guys, all of our panelists and all of you watching this as well to get involved, because it just really feels like it's a new era of space exploration. And I just want to come to you quickly, Livingston, because obviously we were chatting so much beforehand. And how do you feel to be? You've obviously
good. The good news is that because the SpaceX team has done this launch before so many times, there's an element of routineness to it. They know where the tight points are that are critical technically. They know how to pay attention to those tight points and where those inflection points in the count happen. And they were very smooth, very professional, very clean. And I think all that experience made also for very, very clean hardware. So it was a good op. It was a very good op.
It was just incredible. I know we've got Athena on the line. So Athena, we're going to come to you in a second. For those who don't know, Athena and I worked together on launch coverages in Paris, and I'm sure we'll get a hugely emotional reaction. But I just want to go to Joe first, just to get your thoughts, and then Dylan and Rick, and then we'll come to, and then Cass, and then we'll come to you, Athena. Joe, how are you feeling right now?
This is great. I think now that assuming the mission continues to go well and is looking great so far, this is a turning point for NASA. We'll have commercial transportation to the space station, so NASA can focus its efforts and its funding on going further, and exploring, beyond Earth orbit, which is really exciting.
So, did you think they'd launch today? Did you think the weather would hold?
I was 50-50 along with the weather forecast.
As we all. Dylan, I mean, this is a new era in space exploration. What does this mean for your vision now, Space for Humanity? It was lovely to watch your reaction as well. And Rick, your reaction was incredible. I love seeing all you guys reacting. Dylan, how are you feeling about this?
Overwhelmed. I mean, honestly, I want to cry. I want to scream. I want to celebrate. Just overwhelmed. I think, what struck me was that image when it separated from the second stage, and you could see space from inside the Dragon capsule. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? This is a Tesla. This is a 21st century space vehicle in space. This isn't the space shuttle. This isn't Apollo. This is something cool. It's hip. It's futuristic. They're decked out in the modern spacesuits. And I just, to me, it's the science fiction future now happening before our eyes. And then to stick the landing, for style points, just because, the rest of it wasn't impressive enough. It's amazing. It's amazing to me.
Is there any other word other than amazing, I think, to describe? Do you know what gets me? It's the boots. and the spacesuits. It really does feel like you're watching a science fiction film, I think. And talking of science fiction, Rick, you've got a lot of science fiction posters in the background. Loved your reaction, literally on the edge of your seat. How are you feeling right now?
Did something happen? Look, you know what? In Star Trek, this is when the Vulcans show up. You know, this is that moment, that transitional moment, and
Achieving warp drive.
Yeah, exactly. We're there, right? And look, I don't think we could call these kinds of vehicles anymore, talk in terms of launch. This is space flight, and these are space ships. You don't throw away ships, right? We saw that beautiful stage landing.
Yeah.
That is reusability. That is the key. Rapid, reusable, recyclable. And look, this is one of the few cases where something I've written, I hope is wrong, as I wrote this morning, and it looks like it may be. And I'm just praying that the rest of it turns out to be wrong. But by the way, I just want to thank your other panelists. You've got a great show here, and Dylan's vision to put this together. But humanity is on its way. If we can keep this momentum going, I'm going to challenge Joe and his comrades to make sure that the next stage on the way to the moon becomes as commercial, as reusable, as this is. But I'm truly excited. And I think that we have ahead of us now, this isn't a time to sit back and go, okay, it's done, we're going. Anybody who's on this feed that's paying attention here needs to lean in now. And we need to let our political friends, we need to let our media friends know that this is important, but we only see it as a beginning, and we need more because we want to go. We want our kids to have the rights to go. We want the kids who are on the streets out here a mile from me on my interstate in the Capitol blocking the freeway. We want them to be able to see that the world isn't all darkness, that there's hope, there's light out there. And the frontier is where that can happen. You know, when you're in a ship in the frontier, when you're in a habitat in the frontier, everybody in that bubble with you, inside of that place, with a universe around you that's trying to kill you, is your family. You love everybody. During the Cold War, up until now, there's one place in the universe where Russians and Americans not only get along, but they actually love each other. And that's where these guys are going right now, okay? This is all about all of the higher virtues of humanity. There's no greater environmentalist than somebody floating in a bubble above the earth, breathing recycled air, looking at the planet with no borders, as Frank talks about, and re-drinking their own urine. I mean, this is an environmentalist. So all of the virtues that we all would like to see come together in what it is we're trying to make happen. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
No, Rick, you really do talk for England. I love it. I love it.
Can I jump in for a minute?
Of course.
Okay, here's one of the things that, again, it's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that the casual observer doesn't see or doesn't know happens. But the program that allowed these astronauts to fly on a commercial launch vehicle with NASA astronauts and future commercial astronauts was resisted with great, vigor and enthusiasm by NASA, by Congress. And so, NASA said, well, let's try this program. It's an experiment. Let's put in $1 and see if the contractors put in $2 and see if we can spur their innovation. Can we spur their investors to come do this thing so we, the government, don't have to pay the full bill? And, there's still people today going, it should be a completely government program if we're going to fly government astronauts. This experiment worked. This experiment absolutely worked. And the value of the economic structure and the political structure for how this happened opens the door for much more robust exploration, much more robust development on the commercial side, because it's proof that it can work and can work successfully. So there's a whole nother layer to this that starts to make our political environment less important than our exploration desires. So there's a lot here to really applaud.
Sarah, real quick, I just want to point out something. I just changed my hat. And it is important because I was part of the Rebel Coalition, let's say, in 95, calling for this along with a bunch of other people working. It only took us 25 years.
Right.
But we have to acknowledge the fact that we talk about listening, how the other people are listening and reacting to what you're saying. And frankly, there were good people, and I know it will confuse me when I say this, in Congress and in NASA, who were able to listen and begin to work to help make this happen. And while we're all on Twitter about, that was not on purpose, but a Twitter about SpaceX, we have to acknowledge the people at NASA who had the vision to buck their own system and make this happen.
Right, and this is the challenge of human behavior. When you're used to doing something a certain way, changing how you do something, either physically, politically, technically, change is difficult for humans. We're not good change agents. We are really good at what we do and never changing what we do. But this is the area where we break that, where we push beyond ourselves. We push beyond ourselves technically. We push beyond ourselves physically. We push beyond ourselves politically. Right. And this is the example of the human race pushing beyond, its current existence. So it's a great example. I love what we're doing here.
I think these are incredible. Do you know, we're running over time, but let's just extend. No. Livingston, we're fine. No, stay. All of you stay. What I was going to say is let's just extend this Space for Humanity after party for as long as we can have this Zoom for. Because I know we've got Athena with us now who wants to discuss reaction to launch. We've got Frank White with us. Liam, who's
crying?
Pardon?
Is Rachel crying?
Is Rachel crying? Rachel, come on. Why are you crying?
I was definitely crying.
And while we've got Rachel there, and I think great efforts require a great team. I think a massive shout out to Rachel who's organised this entire thing. Thank you so much, just for getting this great group of people together, for inviting all of you listening just to share this experience and to spread the Space for Humanity message.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah.
Congratulations.
And no, crying's allowed. It's all good. We witnessed something incredible. Yeah. Cass, I've noticed you've got a hat on. What have you run to go and get?
I had to match Rick, so I changed my hat.
There you go.
So that's just to honor my commitment to a worldview of what should come in space. It's not just a shameless plug for the show. But my goosebumps are just starting to settle, and as much as I thought, okay, I've pretended these launches myself for 5 years now. I have never been as nervous and as excited as watching those first 10 minutes and that last 30 seconds before liftoff. It's the first launch I've ever actually participated in my life. I was too young and too preoccupied for the space shuttle program, and I'm kind of still shaking about it. It's so perfect. It's so exciting, and Livingston, I didn't know about the controversy between NASA and changing the program, and it makes me so happy to know that we have changed our equation, because that's my big thing. Is in order for humanity to grow and for the planet to survive and for the climate change we have to change our equation. We can't keep going about it the way we have. And you're right, we're really good at just doing the same thing over and over and over again. But to know what you've just kind of let us in on, that they went and took huge risks and made massive changes, and look how beautifully, like combining the private tech and the NASA component and the government component, everyone working in harmony, and it just was this seamlessly executed thing. And I can't wait till they dock.
And by the way, this was a struggle. I would say if I could describe the temperament of a company, there were times where SpaceX was very frustrated because they knew what they were doing, but NASA said, you've got to do it our way. But they found a way through all their differences to meet in the middle, because there was enough recognition of the validity of the technical approach, of the competence of the team to go forward. And it's hard when it's not your team to trust somebody else's team that they're all youngsters, and you just go, oh my God, I've got 10 years older than you. NASA, roll back the tape. Look at the ages of the people running the Apollo program. You know, look at their history before that and go, oh, that guy just got out of school and he was the guy that was running the guidance stuff? Yes. So it's hard for us as we get a little more gray to let some of the folks that still have darker hair and thinner waist to take things and run with it, but their perseverance, you know, made it through, and so it's kudos for both sides getting through that.
I think that's a great point. And as you mentioned, the younger generation, I just want to bring in Athena, otherwise known as Astro Athens, who is a science communicator. She's got a background in astrophysics, and her role is really to inspire people about these launches and to inspire the younger generation through the films she does. So Athena, first of all, can we just talk about what you're wearing?
Yeah, so you know, when the launch was supposed to happen on Wednesday, I went with kind of just the standard Stardust, and I was attempting the NASA meatball and the SpaceX logo for this makeup. I went all out with this, trying to do all the expertise I've learned from makeup artists by being a model for 10 years. So trying to work on that. And I was trying to combine everything from the NASA worm to the meatball to the SpaceX logo, because I think this, as everyone here has been saying, this is such a unison of, like, you know, older generations from like the Apollo missions to now like the future generations and the Artemis mission, and now this intertwining of public and private partnerships. And I have to say, on Wednesday, I was like a complete nervous wreck. I was still really, really nervous today. But when I started seeing those clouds clearing up, there was almost this, I felt like, probably because I've seen so many launches, that as they were going through every step and every process throughout the procedure before launch, I felt like this, like almost like a confidence with the astronauts. And as soon as those first words that were spoken by Doug, and how he was saying, like, thanks for riding with us on Crew Dragon, like, I hope you had a lovely flight. I love that, because that's, I think, what brings the character of the human touch to the cosmos. And I think that that's what makes it so exciting and creative for, you know, the future generations. So yeah, watching it, it was like, boom, yes, boom, they nailed it, boom, they nailed it. And I surprisingly didn't cry. And I'm like very shocked.
Disappointed.
Well, the thing is, I think it's because I felt this, it's like this sensation, like, you know, what Livingston said and what Rick was saying, that this is just the beginning. You know, and it's like, okay, great. Now what's next? They landed, they retrieved that booster. That's the first Falcon 9 booster that's delivered humans to space that was retrieved. Like, that's going down in history. And the whole thing is just incredible. And I can't wait for this 19-hour orbit that they're going to be in until they have the rendezvous, and then they dock with the ISS. I can't wait for that. I almost am so excited for the future of when tourists start to go with, you know, obviously like trained astronauts, those who are in the Air Force, and then tourists, like artists, musicians, creators. I mean, a lot of the astronauts also have a background in art, but to have that viewer of, like, you know, I'm sure you guys have been speaking about the overview effect. I think it's going to be so phenomenal. And I always say, I wonder if it's ever gonna happen one day, but I can't wait whenever I go to space to FaceTime for the first time. You know, I wanna be like, so I just got here, here's my first meal, like, what up, okay, cool, like, there's my house, well, there's my country, I guess my house is somewhere over there, but I guess New York, I could see. So that, it's so extraordinary. So I really hope that, you know, everyone watching this is just like, spreading the news to everyone. This is the epitome of unison of the human race and moving forward into our next stage of evolution.
I think that's an amazing point, and you do a great link, because we've got Frank White with us and we haven't yet talked about the overview effect. So Frank, obviously you coined the term, the overview effect, and I think for everyone watching, if you can just pick up, first of all, I just want your reaction, like we've got everyone's reaction, but if you could just talk more about the overview effect and that impact of, you know, we saw those incredible images of Earth just now from space. It's only 100 or so miles up, yet it's taken, you know, the entire history of our species to get there. how significant is this view of Earth from space, and what does it mean to you today to see this new era in space exploration begin?
Yeah, well, you know, I think everybody has touched on it in one way or another. The overview effect is that view of the Earth from orbit or the moon, and it causes a change in awareness, in worldview. You cannot think about our Earth or the universe in the same way again once you've had it. The astronauts make that very clear. And, you know, my reaction, I was excited from the very beginning, like anybody was, about the launch. But I think for me, it really hit home at the very end of the feed. We did see the Earth. And to me, that's what it's all about. It's about more people experiencing the overview effect. And this is a step in that direction. We're going from high cost, low access to the overview effect to low cost and high access. And, you know, linking it to what's going on the Earth today, Dylan put it very well. Many of the problems we're facing is because not enough of us have that perspective. Not enough of us have had that shift in awareness. We need more, and that's why there's a movement to bring the overview effect down to Earth. Space for Humanity is a leader in that movement. I certainly want to acknowledge that. You know, the other thing I would say is I'm old enough to have experienced Apollo 8. That was a very similar time on Earth, a very difficult year. There were riots in the cities, there were fires in the cities. We had lost 2 of our great leaders in '68. I will be honest, personally, I was in despair at the end of that year. Apollo 8 launched. We saw the whole Earth from a distance. We had the Earthrise photo. I and millions, maybe billions, had hope. We've just had a terrible year, difficult year. It's not even over yet. It's been hard. We've had the quarantine, we've had the lockdown. Now we're having, you know, the protests. I'm hoping this launch will give people hope of what humanity can do, what we can do when we work together. And, you know, the astronauts consistently say, what did you get? When I ask them, what did you get from being an astronaut? I got that we're all in this together. We all have to work together. You know, people have been saying it during the quarantine, and I think we need to say it really loud and clear right now. We are all in this together, and we have to transcend our differences to realize our potential. So that's what's significant. I see more and more people having the overview effect experience, and then I see life improving on Earth, and as we become citizens of the universe, which is, I really believe, our destiny.
Do you think it's almost fair to say this is like this century so far, or at least this decade's Apollo 8 moment in terms of we've had this terrible year? Many of us would have liked to be there in person, but instead what we saw right now is something that unified us of what humans are capable of achieving when they work together.
I really hope so. I mean, you know, you asked my reaction to Apollo 8 and to this launch, even though they seem totally different, very similar. Just excited, you know, feel like a kid again. and again, very hopeful. And I think if we don't have hope, how are we going to evolve? How are we going to realize our potential? And humans have incredible potential, Sarah. It's just that we have to see that. Sometimes we have to see something like the launch today to realize what we can do when we realize we're all in this together.
I think it's a hugely powerful message, and I think no one can sum it up better than you, Frank. So I really appreciate your thoughts and your words today.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to interject. So I'm actually in London, hence why my room's getting slightly darker right now. But if anyone's listening now who's actually from the UK, you can see the International Space Station and the Crew Dragon behind it pass over at 12:10. So it will be low on the horizon, but sorry, not 12:10, 12 minutes past 10 tonight. In the UK, you can see the SpaceX Crew Dragon pass over low on the horizon. So when we're talking about, certainly in England, it's a different situation right now. So we're still in pretty much a full lockdown. So just that ability to be able to look outside the window and to see Crew Dragon and to know that you've seen it, we've all watched it today launch, and now there are 2 more human beings in space, and you can look up and see them, and that's just an incredible thing. And I want to I thank everyone for coming in today. We've actually got Liam, who's working behind the scenes, who's actually from ISS and above. You can't see him right now because he is the great NASA images that we can see, but I'm going to be quite brave and do this. I'm going to open up to our panelists, all of you guys, and I know you're all talkers, but are there any final thoughts that you all want to add into this? And just, I do think that Frank really did sum it up eloquently, but any final messages you want to get across? This really is the after party, and if we get kicked off this, we'll continue it on Instagram Live or some other platform. But if there's anything you guys want to add right now, I just think this is such a great conversation, and I think it'd be great to continue for a little longer before we move on to Liam and then conclude this party. I'm looking
at this world view that we're seeing right now. I'm just kind of mesmerized by the planet as the ship is going on its destination. And I know it's not the same as being up there, but I can't help but wonder, and it's actually to address what Rick said earlier on about how we are doing this incredible moment while the streets are burning. And I don't know, I actually kind of think what our other guest said earlier might be true. We're seeing our potential in front of us. We're seeing where we can be to remind us that we have to get out of those petty squabbles. That when you look at this, what's happening in the streets right now, like how can we be the highest form of life form on this planet and have accomplished what we're viewing right now and be fighting in the streets over the color of our skin? Those two thoughts, they don't equate. And I think what happened today, I'm hoping, is a sign of hope and inspiration for the rest of us. I don't think people can watch what we're watching and maintain their fears and their irrational hatreds for very long. I don't think it's possible.
Mm-hmm. I think it is possible because of how long we've had these irrational fears. The challenge for us is to those of us who are fortunate enough to be in, I'll call it these aspirational positions. You know, you are in front of millions of viewers, and you show the range of insecurity, loss, distance from family, hope, desire to fight forward and continue. You show all those in a role, but those are true emotions that we as a human race have. You see in your show those that are considered less than, and what behavior follows that, and what treatment befalls them. So you show a microcosm of our planet. The challenge for us is those of us who are in positions where we get more views. Someone hears our voice. The challenge for us is to pull the society forward. How do we pull that, the rest of the society forward with us? How do we help them lay down some of their fears because of differences? And so showing that aspirational view, I think, is a challenge. And you as an artist may have some of the first opportunities to do that. But we in our roles have to follow. Space for Humanity is in an excellent position to pull the rest of humanity forward.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, just one other thing to point out that I'm looking forward to, Sarah, just to address your question from a few minutes ago, is we are going to get this, and Rick actually speaks very eloquently about this as well. We're going to get this handshake moment. They are going to dock with the ISS, and we are going to have that moment. And I really hope, you know, we can capture that moment as well, because at the end of the day, and Kaz is brilliant with the way he describes this as well, this is a human endeavor, right? This is a human endeavor, and we've got to capture that humanity, you know, the touch, the hug, the camaraderie, that's what it's all about, right? And I think that whenever you see inhumanity, it's because you're not connecting, you know, human to human. And I think that's just so precious, and we got to really turn the volume up on that. So I just want to acknowledge that piece as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Dylan. And we do have, as Sarah said, Liam from ISS Above who's showing the feed. And ISS Above, Liam, you might be able to sum it up better than I can, but they have this live feed of the Earth from the ISS that they bring to schools so that people can show their students. And so Liam has like an inside knowledge on what those astronauts do while they're on the ISS. So Liam, I'd love to hear just from you anything that you want to share with our audience.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am finally here. So while I'm here, the live video can't be shown. Just to be clear, what I was just showing you were some spectacular video assets created by a friend of mine called Sean Doran. And he has created some of the most amazing real-time sort of renderings of photos from NASA astronauts. So I was sort of doing a little bit of cheating there because I really wanted to give everyone that context of the overview effect in terms of what an astronaut would see. And then Sarah, what you and Rachel, what you referenced is, yeah, I created this little thing called the ISS Above. It sort of runs on a Raspberry Pi, and it tracks the space station, lets you know every time it's going by. It's actually got a little flasher on it. So I have it does that whenever the space station is passing by. And I have one on my porch. But what it also does is show live video from the cameras that are on the space station. And it's been doing that since NASA launched these camera systems back in April of 2014. And those live video feed, it is available to the public. You can watch it anytime you want. And what's coming up is that there's a new camera system that they dedicated. It just happens to be the same camera that is primarily used to show the approaching view of the Crew Dragon as it's about to dock into the commercial docking port on the front of the station. So that's really what we're heading up to, seeing in just a moment. So what I want to show you is right now. So I've switched my screen over to show the orbit where the space station is right now, and it's currently set up to be over in checking out where the station is over Kennedy Space Center. So the station, just so as you know, passed by Kennedy Space Center just 7 minutes before the launch. And what we saw was the space station doing, the Crew Dragon doing what it needed to do, was launch at the right moment, just to be able to connect with the space station's orbit path, and then catching up to it. So in about now 18 hours, almost 18 hours from now, it will be ready to be docking with the International Space Station. But that's really, that's really the technical part of what I wanted to share, just about the space station. And but really what it comes down to, I wanted to underline what was shared throughout this whole experience. For me, I've been sort of an observer while also running the stream on the back end here, is the space station represents an opportunity to unite the world. That's why I'm doing this. It's not because I've got this cool technology gadget. It is about what is possible when human beings work together across all kind of cultural backgrounds and issues politically, That's what it's about, and getting people together in the face of real life problems that are happening right now. It is the most moving thing to be involved in. So thanks for letting me be a part of this whole aspect of providing this launch watch party. I hope it's been useful.
Thank you so much, Liam, for those words. And I think that's just such a powerful point to pick up on. And it's not so much the images of space and of other worlds, which are inspiring, but it's the images of us. It's almost like we had to leave Earth to really learn about ourselves, to discover who we are, and to put a mirror up in front of ourselves. So those, the work you're doing is absolutely incredible. And it is that cliche, but it's all about continuing to inspire the next generation, because all of this sounds like science fiction. Even what happened today, it sounds and looks like science fiction, but it's, you know, science fiction should be renamed science prediction, because eventually all the things we imagine come true and all the things we can't imagine become true. So we just need to keep on going. And I think with so much difficulty that we're all facing in the world right now, there is that hope and that possibility, not just from the wonder of what else is out there in space, but also the unification that can come from realizing that space is bigger than any one company, any one individual, any one entrepreneur, any one nation. And it's about collaboration, and it's about working together for the good of humanity, and that we all share this one spaceship, which is Earth. So I'm just so grateful to all of you who participated, to all of the panelists. I wish we could literally have an hour with each of you. Maybe Rachel and I need to chat about doing individual panels with all you guys, because it's just been so fascinating. We've got a completely broad spectrum of people here, and on all you guys watching as well. And it's just so fascinating to see that space isn't just about one type of person. Space isn't just a cliche, you know, you don't have to look a certain way or act a certain way. Space is inspirational for all of us. And just a reminder, if you are in the UK as well, 12 minutes past 10 tonight, there is a chance of seeing Crew Dragon actually go above. And I know, Liam, you post out the International Space Station times, but it's just an incredible feat to look up and to see human beings 240 miles away living and working in space. And space is that close, and we can see our space future, our space age from our own back doors. And that's just an incredible thought. So I'm really sad that we have to wrap it up, because we've already overrun by quite a long time, but I'm sure we'll sort out an after party because yeah, there's just so much inspiration. But I just wanted to hand back to Rachel now to see if she had some closing words about the role of Space for Humanity and why the work Space for Humanity does is really so important.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. It doesn't seem like there's much I have to say about why this mission is important. I think it came throughout this entire conversation. And thank you, everyone. I'm so glad that you guys spoke on all the topics that you spoke about. I think you incredibly shared and embodied the mission. And I think it's clear to all the participants why space needs to be for everyone, and why it's not just about going to space, why it's also about improving life on Earth. If you are interested in getting involved with Space for Humanity, you can go to our website, spaceforhumanity.org. There's a number of different ways you can get involved. We have a webinar series. We had a conversation a few weeks ago with Cass and Dylan, which was amazing. We had one between myself and astronaut Nicole Stott. And we have a number of other ways that you can get involved. We have a membership program as well, and social media pages. Thank you, everyone, so much for your time. Rick, Joe, Space for Humanity team, Jared and Mimi, Athena, Frank, Cass, Livingston, Dylan, Liam, Sarah, and then also our special guests that were here during the first launch that weren't able to be here today. Thank you to them as well. This was really, really, really incredible. And thank you, everyone, all the attendees, for being here. I love that there's still 150 people here, and we're 45 minutes past launch. So
what a party it was. I hope they brought Tanya on that rocket.
Exactly. Mimi, I like your look. Nice. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I like it. Yeah.
Well done.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thanks for including me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Livingston.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.